and welcome to the Keeping Abreast podcast with Dr. Jenn, the show dedicated to empowering women through knowledge, tools, and resources to take control of your breast health journey. I'm your host, Dr. Jenn Simmons, and I'm thrilled to have you join me on this insightful and inspiring journey. As a breast cancer surgeon turned functional medicine physician, I'm on a mission to empower women to live their best lives. This podcast dives deep into all topics related to breast health, including prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and holistic approaches to support overall well-being. You know what I say, breast health is health. So no matter who you are, a breast cancer survivor, newly diagnosed, in treatment, living with metastatic disease, or you're simply seeking to improve your breast health, this podcast is for you. Join us on this transformative path towards better breast health and a thriving life. And now, let's get to today's episode. Hi there, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Keeping Abreast podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jenn Simmons, and do I have a special treat for you? Because I have a great lady from Nashville with us today. So Dani Williamson is a nurse practitioner. She was practicing family medicine, and her words, not mine, she jumped off the boat. Through her own life experience, figured out that we're really on the wrong track, on the wrong path in conventional medicine. Not that we're not well-intentioned, but that the way that the system operates, no pun intended, for all of you who know that I used to be a surgeon, the way that the system operates is not to drive health. It's not for the benefit of being healthy. It is symptom management. It's broken. And as a result of it being broken, we have less than 10% of Americans who have metabolic health. We have a Hashimoto's and thyroid epidemic where more than 20% of women are suffering from thyroid dysfunction. Yes. We have women, all Americans actually have so much dysfunction in their gut. And Dani decided that she was not going to continue to practice in that broken paradigm. And she's going to practice common sense medicine. And she's here today to tell us what that is. So Dani, welcome.
Thank you so much. And yes, common sense, practical medicine. It really is my specialty as a family practice nurse practitioner. And
take us back. Because I want to hear about where this all started.
Well, it started in the shithole that I grew up in. Yeah. Complete chaos, to be quite frank. I grew up in a complete shithole of chaos. I did. It's just as crude as that. My grandfather had died by suicide. My mom attempted multiple times. I had a child molester for a stepfather. And then the second one almost beat me to death one night, my senior year in high school. So I started with chronic diarrhea in high school. I had the first of 4 colonoscopies at age 20. Every GI procedure known to man, given every medicine known to man, diagnosed with IBS. Then I started itching uncontrollably in my 20s, just uncontrollable itching, multiple dermatologists.
Because you wanted to get out of your skin.
What?
Because you wanted to get out of your skin.
Amen. Yes. Then I was diagnosed with lupus and fibromyalgia while I was in an verbally and emotionally abusive marriage. And I too became suicidal. So it was, I spent 24 years. I left my husband, was on food stamps and a medical card with 2 little kids for 5 years. Applied to nursing school. I have a master's degree in fashion design, and I made a 180 turn because a friend of mine who was an OBGYN said, Dani, you'd be incredible as a nurse midwife. So I went to midwifery school and became a nurse midwife and then a family practice nurse practitioner. I was 44 years old when I got out of school, working for Dr. Kalb, my first job out of school. And one day he looked at me and he said, Dani, what are you eating? Don't you know your diet controls your disease? I had just spent $200,000 in education at Vanderbilt, right?
Yep.
I had no idea that your diet could heal you or kill you, heal you or kill you.
Yep.
I literally reversed 24 years of chronic lifestyle diseases by changing my diet, addressing the inflammation, and addressing the childhood trauma that happened to me the first 18 years of my life. And it changed the entire trajectory of my medical practice. I hope my children's lives, and it has since thousands of patients' lives. So, Jen, it's interesting. I tell people every day, I am living proof that if you were born healthy, you don't have to live sick. And you can reverse anything that you've turned on, or at least dial it back so greatly that it's under the radar. I still have lupus, but I don't have any symptoms of lupus. I'm not on medication for lupus. That, as my rheumatologist told me, she said, well, Danielle, lupus will kill you. It kills women every year. We have no cure for it. Here's your pain medicine. Here's your anti-inflammatories, and we'll check your kidneys in 6 months. That was BS, just BS. And so I have made a living out of addressing chronic lifestyle diseases, right? That are turned on by your lifestyle and turned off by your lifestyle. And my focus is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It has been for years. Well, now that I learned about trauma, I didn't know about childhood trauma. Well, no wonder so many of my patients are women patients for sure, or Hashimoto's patients. This is your fifth chakra. This is your voice. And when I learned about trauma and your voice and these women losing their voice, and it's a miracle that I don't have thyroid disease. I don't. My trauma manifested right down here in the gut, and that's what I see. So I have so many of these women that once we break down this childhood trauma and we talk about this, number one, they're in a puddle on the floor, right? Because they've never even connected the dots. And why would they?
Yeah.
And no one's ever addressed it with them. And so I work on common sense, practical medicine, basically. And I have 6 steps that I address. There's more than that, but eat well, sleep well, move well, poop well, de-stress well, and commune well. And it's what I wrote the book about. It's my 6 steps. And on top of addressing the trauma, that's how we get going on the very first visit. And I am telling you, it's not rocket science. It's very simple what I ask people to do. And we start with the gut first, because I'm a big believer, and I know that a lot of people aren't. If you don't heal the gut first and address the inflammation in the gut first, we'll never get to the sleep and the pooping and the inflammation and all that. So that's how I start, and we go from there.
Yeah. So I love what you said in the beginning, that if you were born healthy, you don't have to live sick. And we all start off perfect for the most part, right?
For the most part, most people.
But the exposures start really early. And I firmly believe that a lot of the dysfunction that we see in childhood that then carries through to adulthood, especially with autoimmunity and allergies and things like that, I think this is triggered very early with early exposure to cow's milk because of formula.
Oh, absolutely. And cow's milk, dairy is the number 1 food allergy for children in the United States. Eggs are number 2. And eggs are hard to give up. Eggs are number 1 for me. But cow's milk, what I tell my patients is, if they're believers, I say, Daniel in the Bible knew how inflammatory dairy was 2,000 years ago, before we ever had hormones and antibiotics and cows eating grass with glyphosate and all the things. They gave up dairy, red meat, and red wine, which, red meat and red wine, I don't. I'll give up dairy before that. But, absolutely. And we feed them milk. And even to this day, April 2024, our pediatricians are still pushing dairy. Dairy.
Oh, yeah.
They've got to have dairy. They have to have their calcium.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's what's so amazing, is that our physicians think that is where we should be getting our calcium.
Yes.
Right. And you said, these cows are being fed grass with glyphosate. Actually, you're lucky if that cow is being fed grass, because
Well,
most cows are not being fed grass. They're being fed a completely unnatural diet of corn and soy and whatever commodity crops they put in front of them in a pen,
in a pen.
where they're not able to move at all.
No.
So I really try to not get into that whole argument about where your protein should be coming from, because that in and of itself is so inflammatory for people. I have deep beliefs about people who are actively cancering, and that person needs to avoid as many toxins as they can possibly avoid. But if you're not actively cancering, where you get your protein from is your own decision, as long as you're eating a clean source, a natural source, that, if it's an animal, has lived a natural life. Because eating a penned animal that is not being fed its native diet is highly inflammatory. And as I've heard you say, inflammation is the key to all of this.
Inflammation is the devil. I talk about it all the time. It's exactly correct. So, as our buddy JJ Virgin says, you're only as good as what your animal ate. And it's a fact. And so it starts early on. And it's hard. It's very simple what I ask people to do, but it's not easy. When you ask people to give up dairy, so I start with my patients, we do a full-on elimination the first visit, cutting out the top 7 inflammatory foods.
Okay, so what are they?
Well, gluten, dairy, soy, corn, sugar, eggs, and peanuts. So those are the top 7. Dr. Kalb started me off on 2010, removing those foods from my diet. Well, patients look at you and they say, well, Dani, what am I going to eat? That's all I eat. Well, so those are the best patients to work with, because you're like, oh my goodness, we have hundreds of foods to eat out there. And the research is clear. We only eat maybe 12 to 15, 20 foods if you're lucky. Yeah. We feed our kids the same 5 to 7 meals their entire life. There's no diversity. In the spring and summer, like it is here in Nashville, this is the perfect time to do an elimination and cut those foods out. And like I said, dairy and eggs are the top 2 for children in the United States. So I attempt to get the entire family involved in this, but that's difficult. If mom has a bunch of kids or a husband who's not on board, it's very difficult to get her to change her lifestyle. It's hard.
I have it a little easier, because when people get a life-threatening illness, that is a huge motivator, right? That is a huge impetus for change. And I think that everyone pretty much gets healthier when you eliminate gluten and dairy. What are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. I remember, and I wish I could find the research on this, but I was in New York City at the Integrative Healthcare Symposium. It's been over 10 years ago. Mark Hyman shared a slide that showed a woman's knee tissue. Anyway, he said, and I know I'm not making this up, and I've used it for over a decade now, 1 bite of gluten can set the inflammatory response back in your body for 6 months. He said it. I heard it. I've used it forever. I know there's got to be research out there on it, but absolutely. So, and I tell them 1 ingredient food. It's real easy to turn around. Look at your, if your food comes in a box, a bag, a can, a tube, a roll, that's fake food. So what we're designed to eat is 1 ingredient food. And again, it's chopping, cooking, meal prepping. You cheat when you're not prepared. It's as simple as that. So I start the patients off on a 10-day detox that I've used for 15 years, the Metagenics one. I think it's fantastic. We private label it. It's been around for 45 years. It's cutting out those 7 foods for 10 days, and it's a Mediterranean liver detox. but it's literally like detoxing for dummies. One day at a time, they have broken it down, day 1 through 10. So it's not easy, but it's simple the way I've done it. And then I transition them. Our buddy JJ wrote the best book. I am sorry. I've used it since 2012 on food intolerances and weight loss resistance. So I transitioned them right to JJ's book. I told her, I said, dang, I think I've made you a New York Times bestseller for this book for 12 years because I've used it. I was doing the same thing before the book came out. Now I have a book that literally breaks it down. And for me, for my patients, it's a solid 31 days of decreasing inflammation, increasing energy, helping them sleep, helping them poop, and their joint pain goes away. Their migraine headaches start to go down, right? Their bloating, their gas, their constipation, their heartburn starts to resolve in 31 days of eating incredible food. And by the time they come back, we've done food sensitivity testing on them, most likely for them. They roll right in to their food sensitivity test, and so they're not so overwhelmed because they've already cut out these foods and they already know they feel better. And if eggs comes back as number one for them, they're like, yeah, Dani, I know. I'm not surprised because you know what? I've had one migraine since I left here because you made me cut eggs out. Yeah, I did. Sure did. So that's how I do it. It works for me. I'm sure it's not perfect, but it works. Even if they do 75% of what I need them to do, 50%, they have won and they feel better. And then they start to realize what's at the end of my fork is going to heal me or kill me. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And they'll think twice about driving through Chick-fil-A with 51 ingredients in one sandwich again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about thyroid dysfunction because so many people have questions about that and where it's coming from. We have an epidemic right now. So where do you think all this thyroid dysfunction is coming from?
Well, I think a lot of it is coming from what we just talked about for 15 minutes, the childhood trauma. I think the environment, all of the electromagnetic fields that we have. I think everything from parasites to heavy metals to food sensitivities to trauma to, radiation. I mean, we know that's common sense stuff, the radiation of around the thyroid and things. I think, and, a piece of it is genetic for sure. And then I have a lot of patients who are put on thyroid medicine. They come in, they're really sort of subclinical, and they really weren't a hypothyroid patient. Now, they were a Hashimoto's patient, most likely. And we start healing the gut.
Do you want to talk about the difference there? Because I don't know that everyone understands the difference.
Hashimoto's thyroiditis is the number one undiagnosed autoimmune disease in the United States. It oftentimes precedes hypothyroidism, sluggish thyroidism, by decades. So what would cause a Hashimoto's thyroiditis and not be a hypothyroid patient? Inflammation. Anything that ends in itis is an inflammatory response. Arthritis, gastritis, thyroiditis, sinusitis. So what's going to cause inflammation of the thyroid? Well, it could be anything. Women have autoimmune disease 7, 8, 10 times more than men. We're the most toxic as a rule. I tell women every day, lotion, makeup, hair color, lipstick, nail polish remover, shampoo, conditioner, deodorant. I mean, the list can go on and on. Cleaning supplies. Here's the nose. Here's the thyroid. There's a proximity issue here, right? Perfume on the thyroid, anything that's going to create an inflammatory response. So
I never thought about that. People spray their necks with perfume.
You bet they do. And what's perfume? Nothing but chemicals.
Yeah.
Only chemicals. It's a dirty, dirty industry, the skincare beauty industry. Yeah. America, I think, has banned something like 11 chemicals since 1938.
Yeah.
Europe has banned thousands. We're not in the banning chemical business because it's big business. It's money and it's padding pockets. So yeah, perfume, absolutely not. You don't put anything near your thyroid if you want your thyroid to survive. So we protect this thyroid. It's the master gland. And there's a genetic component to it as well, right? Childbirth. You may have a postpartum thyroiditis because it's hard on your body to have a baby.
Yeah.
So or a big virus, Epstein-Barr, you could get COVID and have a postpartum thyroiditis where we create these antibodies. I had 2 patients this week. This does not happen to me very often. Yesterday was the last one. They came to me for other things. They had no idea they had thyroid issues. Both of them have beautifully perfect thyroid function, a TSH, a T3, T4, but their antibodies are in the hundreds. They had no idea they had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. That doesn't happen to me too often anymore because a lot of providers are checking antibodies more so than not anymore. A lot of them.
I don't see that at all.
Well, maybe I just get
most of my people come in and have maybe never had their antibodies checked.
Maybe because I focus on thyroid, so I get the patients already that know, a lot, and they've had their antibodies checked. But this was a great day yesterday and Tuesday. Not good for them because they were horrified. And I said, it's fine. Your thyroid itself is working, but this is an inflammatory response. And everything that we're doing to cool down the inflammation in the body is going to affect the thyroid. And then we started them on a little ashwagandha and a little bit of thyroid glandular, like over-the-counter stuff. But it is an epidemic. And again, I think not addressing the childhood trauma as well, Jen, because when you lose your voice, not physically, but some people do, right? When you lose your voice, it affects everything in your body. I mean, it's overwhelming to me. It almost makes me cry because I think, man, I was a fighter growing up and I just never lost this. This was like, I was going to fight. And that's, one of the reasons my second stepfather he hit me, not because I was a loudmouth, right? So not my fault, but you know what I mean? I just never shut up. I was not going to back down. And so I never lost my voice, but those women and men that do, it's empowering for them to know that, we can turn this around. Many of my patients, their endocrinologists tell them, we're never checking antibodies again. There's no reason to. There's no cure for it. Just like my rheumatologist said to me with lupus, there's no cure.
Yeah.
And there's no reason. And diet doesn't make a difference. Doesn't matter if you eat all the gluten in the world. There's no research that it cross-reacts with your thyroid. What are you, crazy? Yes, there is. We have decades of research.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's no cure if you're going to take the tack that they take, right? There's no cure if all you're going to do is give immunosuppressants to block the body from doing what your body is just trying to protect you. Your body thinks that you're being poisoned. Your body thinks you're being attacked. Right. So all of this response, this autoimmune response, is your body trying to protect you. So if all you do is block your body's response and not take away what it's responding to, of course there's no cure. And in
Beautifully
fact,
said. I could not have said that any better. That is absolutely perfect. And that's why you and I will never go out of business, because no one is talking about that to our patients and they never address any of this. My son's in medical school right now. He's starting his 4th year in August. And so he's in the thick of it with just first year of rotations. He's internal. Well, no, he started psych Monday, but he was in internal medicine. And, they're not being taught any of this. And he's in DO school. He wanted to be a DO because he knew what his mom does. He wants to come back and take over the clinic. And I was so excited when he wanted to apply to DO schools. Well, I mean, maybe some DO schools are, he gets probably a little bit more integrative to touch to it, but not really. Yeah. Not really.
I think probably about 20 or 30 years ago, that it might have been different, but they made an effort to mimic for lack of a better word, the MD schools. So my training going through the MD system from medical school to residency was almost identical to my friends who went to DO school and then they had to do, I think they had to do like one extra year as a medical rotation or something like that before they came into surgical residency. But our educations now are almost identical.
Yes.
What's different is the naturopathic. So an ND education is more open. I actually didn't even know that that was an option when I went to medical school. I thought that there was only one way to be a doctor, and that was to go to, MD school. I am still amazed at how little penetrance there is of this concept that health happens at home into mainstream medicine. I think it has something to do with ego, with wanting to feel as if you have control over the process, because you and I both know as practitioners, we can share this information all day long. But unless that person in front of us is bought in and is going to go home and make their health happen, nothing else is going to matter, because health has to happen at home. It has to happen in the kitchen, where you talked about, and it has to happen with the way that they live their lives. Those pillars that you talked about, those 6 pillars that you talked about, that is up to the patient to do. I have a very dear friend whose son was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, and he went to Mass General Hospital, and the head of rheumatology at MGH told him that there was no cure, that he needed biologics. And he said, well, my Aunt Jenn said that diet can change things. And he said, well, you tell your Aunt Jenn that diet has nothing to do with it. And this is coming from MGH. I mean, these are supposed to be our authorities. These are supposed to be the people that we are looking to have the definitive answer, to give the definitive word. And yet the word that they're giving is not serving people. I mean, it's selling more biologics for sure, but you and I both know where that road ends, because you can only suppress the body's systems for so long. You can only suppress the immune system for so long. And you're either going to get an overwhelming response from the immune system because it won't be suppressed any longer, and they'll continue to have disease and continue to have dysfunction and continue to have destruction, or they're going to get cancer, because you can't take the immune system out of the picture for too long, because the immune system is there. It's what's protecting us. And so if you have immune dysfunction, this is the message that your body is trying to tell you, this is not working for me. It's not working.
It's exact. Yeah. It's not such a little red flag. It's the little red flags that I talk about all the time, that we ignore. And that's a huge red flag. But yet we keep marching on, ignoring it, and still doing exactly the same thing we're doing. We don't pay attention to that joint pain. I was 18 years old working in my dad's restaurant, a hamburger restaurant in Paducah, Kentucky. Hamburger, ice cream, hot dogs, hot fudge sundaes, all the things, which is so ironic now. But anyway, I was hurting so badly. I would eat, I'd be in the bathroom, and then my hands were hurting. These are red flags. These are things that I tried to find help for decades before anybody ever paid attention. That's not normal. It's not normal to hurt. Yeah. It's not normal to, poop your pants, basically. I lived in New York City when I graduated college. I moved to New York City. I knew where every restroom in New York City was when I was going. That's not normal. These are red flags that we ignore in traditional allopathic healthcare. We ignore just as humans, in our life, and we're not curious. Jen, the thing is, we've lost all curiosity. I think doctors have, surgeons have, Nurses have, we're not curious about things. And I hope I never lose my curiosity as to why. Why is that? Wonder why. Why would that 3-year-old that mom brought into me, who's on biologics, 3 years old, why would she? I can't remember. This has been 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember what her actual diagnosis was, but she was on multiple biologics. It was 3 years old. Why would that happen? Why? Nobody's questioning things. So that's what we do, is we question, and we get people eating well, and then we get people sleeping well. I'm a big believer that sleep is as important as eating, because your body heals when you sleep. And I am blessed. I have always been a great sleeper, but the majority of my patients either can't go to sleep or can't stay asleep. And their bedroom is filthy. I tell women every day, your bedroom is for sleep and sex only. If you're not doing one or the other, get out of it. I don't have anybody in my bed with me, so I can read a book in bed. But, other than that, there should be no TVs, no phones, no wireless routers, no electric beds that you've paid $10,000 for, and you're sleeping on an electrical minefield of electromagnetic fields. No wireless routers. That bedroom needs to be a sanctuary. We can't get away from these electromagnetic fields in here and these computers and all that, but you can at night. And that is when your body heals, is when you sleep. So whatever it takes, if you snore, then if you have untreated sleep apnea, it can take up to 10 years off of your lifespan. What? Well, that's unbelievable. If your husband snores or your wife snores, you need to get them a sleep study. Or if they won't do that, you need to move to the other bedroom, because you have to sleep. Your body heals when you sleep. So you may need magnesium. You may need, lots of things, we don't have time to talk about. But sleeping well is a huge pillar. And it is, if you don't sleep well, this, Jen, you will never eat well.
Yeah.
And you're definitely not going to move well.
Yeah.
And movement is, movement as in pooping and exercising.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the study that I saw said that if you just, after losing one night's sleep, and it doesn't have to be the whole night, just one night of short sleep, you will consume more than 400 calories than usual the following day, because that's how your body is trying to crave energy. And you don't make good decisions the next day. I mean, all your decisions are bad the next day after losing sleep, because, as you said, sleep is where the healing happens. Sleep is where
detox.
Yes. And there are a number of reasons why people don't sleep. And it's often that you don't need more. Like, yes, do I take magnesium at night? Absolutely. But I don't think that for most people, you're not sleeping because you have a sleeping pill deficiency, right? Like, for most of us, we need less. We need less consumption. We need to consume less food. We need to consume less light. We need to consume less energy. We need to consume less oxygen. We need to do less in order to sleep. And because our society completely values the waking hours, and we devalue sleep, right? Sleep is for lazy. Sleep is for the Homer Simpsons of the world. Like, we and we are, as a result of not valuing sleep, completely saddled with chronic disease. Saddled.
Yes. And, I learned from a good friend of mine who's an electrical engineer, and her entire career was built around making homes safe, EMF wise, electromagnetic field wise. She came on my Facebook Live I do on Sundays, and it was fascinating to me. She was talking about babies. So we're talking about, people say they don't sleep from day one. I never slept from day one. She told me that those baby monitors in the crib, she said, don't ever put a baby monitor in your crib or over the baby. She said, watch those babies spin around. They're trying to get away from the monitor. They're trying to get away from the electromagnetic field that is constantly boring down on that baby. I was like, what in the heck? Never even thought of that.
Yeah.
And she told me, she said, dogs and cats will tell you where your electromagnetic fields are in your house. Cats love them. They will lay on top of your computer. They will lay on top of the TV. Back when we had TVs you could lay on, the cat would lay on it. And they all had feline leukemia from laying on TVs. These are things I didn't know. She said a dog will get up and walk away when the HVAC unit or the refrigerator comes on if they're laying by it. They won't stay near it. And she said children don't like it either. But yet we don't pay attention to it. And she said, do not put a monitor around that baby in that baby. And wow. And
it's so amazing because my dog, when we walk, he will literally go into the middle of the street to get away from the houses that have electric fences around them. He doesn't have an electric fence collar on. He perceives that energy and avoids it at all costs.
Yes. So we have to pay attention to it. Yeah, it's fascinating. But her career is fascinating. She's an engineer, and they have a different brain than we do. But she taught me a lot about testing your home, testing with a Gauss meter, which I have in the closet. I can't grab it right now. It's a $39 Gauss meter off of Amazon, and you can take it and all over your bedroom and find out where the electromagnetic fields are. And if your HVAC unit, and many people's are outside their bedroom, the big HVAC unit, she said your head of your bed has got to be more than 6 feet away from that, because you can't stop that from coming through the house, from coming through the brick. And she takes her Gauss meter to hotel rooms, and she checks, and she pulls up the sheets at the end of the bed and puts her head at the end of the bed, because your hotel room is on the next room right there to the next.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Things I never thought about. She said, you'll sleep much better when you do these tiny little hacks.
Yeah. That's amazing. I never thought of that either, but I can almost perceive, like I can't be in a car that has Wi-Fi. I get an instant headache. I can almost perceive when there is too much EMF around me. And amazingly, I took a vacation a couple of weeks ago with the Holistic Leadership Council. And we went to this amazing yoga retreat in Mexico. And there's like no Wi-Fi there. There's no TV. There's no anything. I have never slept so well or felt such peace. I almost get a headache every day from just being in front of screens and lights and just like too much stimulation for my brain. And it was so amazing to be in that space where I had none of it. So we really need to dial into what we're putting in our bodies, because we're not missing out on sleep because we don't have enough. We're missing out on sleep because there's too much. There's too much stimulus.
Great way to say it. So we have to eat well. We have to sleep well. We have to move well, right? And again, you won't move or eat well if you're not sleeping well. It's all interconnected. And I'm a big fan of movement. We got to move our bodies, and honestly, that's the one that I slack in the most. I move, I exercise, I'm in decent shape, but I'm not where I need to be at 58 years old. So I've got to ramp it up. And I was listening to your podcast a week or two, whenever it came out with JJ, and, she was going to get in the best shape at 60, and she is, and it's key.
She doesn't have far to go, by the way. She doesn't have far to go.
Oh, it's crazy. But I would love to be half what she is. That's why I tell patients, if you'll just do 50% of what I need you to do, you're going to be good. but our bodies are so resilient and they're designed to move and be tugged and pulled and lift things. And I love her analogy of, I want to lift my 60-pound suitcase and be able to put it up on the, above the overhead in the airplane. And at 60, and my mom just died at 78 years old, full-blown Alzheimer's, could not walk, could not feed herself, could not use the bathroom, was completely incontinent, 78, in an assisted living since she was 73,
so young.
Diagnosed about 70, meaning that came on in her 40s, right? I mean, so 50s. You don't have to be your genetics. And I did my mom's genetics. She does not have any Alzheimer's genes at all. APOE, complete 3-3, just completely normal. So you got to move well. You got to move your body. And I went out and walked after dinner last night. I'm having some chronic shoulder pain problems. Anyway, I got up and went out. I don't go out after at dinner and walk every night. I just don't. I should, because I know what the research shows, right? On insulin and metabolism and all that. But I slept better last night than I have slept in a long time. I slept really great. And you got to move. And always think about Jack LaLanne, which young people have no clue who Jack LaLanne is. He had the longest running health show in the history of the United States still. And he preached about white sugar, white flour, white alcohol, white everything. He said, all the white processed foods were the devil, and you got to move your body. And he said, and he did basic stuff. He didn't have full blown gyms. He did push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, free weights. It doesn't take much. If you want a hula hoop, I don't care. That is a fantastic cardiovascular workout. And so you got to move your body. And when you do that, you've got more energy. You feel better. You do sleep better, and you choose to eat better when you exercise. It's not rocket science.
It also helps with gut health, because you don't move unless you move.
You bet. So that's my fourth step, right? Eat well, sleep well, move well, poop well. You got to poop. Nobody's pooping around here. I've got a standard poodle laying in the floor over here beside me. I tell my patients, I'm like, look, you need to poop like your poodle. They eat, they go and poop, and they are thrilled to death about it. And they run in, oh, looky there. Hi.
This is Teddy.
Oh, Teddy. My dog is Edwin, and he's laying over here. Oh, Teddy. Yeah, he's a black standard poodle. But we have to poop. I never had that problem. I had chronic diarrhea. I pooped like a goose my entire life until I realized what was happening. But, a lot of my patients, I tell them, dehydration, maybe you're just dehydrated. You've got to drink your water. And when we call them and check up on them after their first visit, and I've put in their plan, they need to drink whatever, I don't know, 75 ounces, whatever their weight and all that is, how much coffee. It's unbelievable how much better these people are just having a bowel movement. But maybe they need magnesium.
Just remembering to drink water.
Just remembering one simple thing. Again, it's real simple.
Although magnesium, now that you bring it up, that is an important point, because we do need magnesium. It's involved in hundreds of reactions in the body. It is so essential to the functioning of our health. And we should be getting magnesium from our diet, because it's something that is found in the soil, except our soil is depleted, like everything else in this world of convenience. And with depleted soil, you don't get it.
No, you don't. Not at all. Magnesium changed my life. Man, I wish I'd known about magnesium 30 years ago. So just a little bit of magnesium glycinate, chelate, malate's what I use with patients. And, sleeping, headaches, restless legs, high blood pressure, heart palpitations, constipation. I mean, the list goes on and on. But yeah, so when you move, maybe you just need a squatty potty, right? Maybe I'm a huge fan of putting your feet up to go to the restroom. It makes a huge difference. A squatty potty. Who knew? we're not designed to lay down to have babies, and we're not designed to just sit down and poop either. So I'm a big believer in that, and some magnesium and some water and some exercise, and, decreasing stress, which for me is my fifth step to healing, is de-stress well. Stress will kill you. Stress will kill you. Many people clamp down. They won't have a bowel movement because they're so stressed. But, I'm a big believer. I tell women every day, you may not be the head of the household. It depends on your household, right? But you may not be the head of the household, the head of the home, but you set the tone for the entire home. Mm-hmm. The woman does.
Yep.
The minute she walks through that door, the entire family feeds off of your tone. It just does. Most likely it doesn't feed off of dad's, if you've got a nuclear family there. And I am an only child, but I'm a single mom. So it was me. And I was a raging lunatic for years raising these kids, too stressed, no money, didn't feel well. And I set the tone all right. And it was not good in this house. I had no margin in my life, no margin at all. There was no room for error. And if there was any mistake at all, anything went off, I flew off the deep end. And my vessel was empty, and I never filled it up. And I have learned.
You were in survival mode.
I was in survival mode, and I didn't know. If someone had looked at me and said, "Girl, you got to build your life. You got to build your life so that you don't have to escape from it, so that your self-care is in your life," I would have punched him in the face, because there was no room to build self-care into my world. But I have since learned that I have to AED my life, right? Automate, eliminate, and delegate everything I can in my life in order to give me some margin so that I can fill my vessel up, and that there's overflow, because the overflow is where everyone else benefits, right? And that's why you put your oxygen mask on first.
Yep.
But I'm a big believer. My friend Michael Hyatt, who's a big business coach, and he taught me about automating, eliminating, and delegating everything you can out of your life. And automate everything, whatever you can do, automate it. Eliminate everything that's not serving you. And when I tell women, you do know you can get out of that marriage that's abusive. You can. I did. I know. I left a job 10 years ago, stepped out of the boat, walked on water. I left a job that was killing me, opened my own clinic, and I have never looked back. Yeah, it's scary. You can, if you don't want to have Thanksgiving coming up in November, you've done it forever, and it is an absolute disaster for your health to have to host it. Guess what? I'd send a message out now. I can't do this. I've done it for 20 years. I think Thanksgiving's great, but someone else is going to have to do it this year. And that's it. You don't have to explain anything. I mean, it's like, whoa, I didn't know that I could say no. But it's not about saying no, Jen. It's about saying, what's the best yes for you and your family?
Yeah. Because when you say yes to everyone else, you're saying no to you.
Yes. Or to something else, or your family, or whatever. You're saying no. Scheduling this podcast with you today, if I didn't want to do it, if I didn't have the bandwidth for it, I would have said, I can't do it. I think you're amazing. I'll listen to every podcast you got out there, sis, and I'm supporting you all the way, but I don't have the energy or the bandwidth to do it. I had the right to say that. Well, I've built a world now that I don't have to escape from. But it wasn't easy.
How did you do that? Because there are so many women who are in situations. I mean, God bless the woman that I spoke to yesterday, my new patient, is in a job that her words, not mine, has to get out of. In a marriage, her words, not mine, that is unsupportive and miserable. And yet she stays. She's in that marriage for 40 years. She's in this job for 15 years, knows that she has to get out of them, and yet she stays. So where did you find the strength, and how would you advise other people? Because the problem is, when you don't get out of the job, when you don't get out of the marriage, when you don't get out of the toxic environment, when you don't get out of the relationship that's killing you, you end up in my office. You end up with
Bingo.
breast cancer. You end up with a sign that you cannot ignore.
Yep. Well, that's a loaded question. I don't know. As we discussed earlier, I've always just fought I never had anybody fighting for me. I mean, that's not a pity story. It's just a crappy childhood and stuff. So I don't know. I think some people have it in them, some don't. Some are overwhelmed. Now, I'll tell you what, I did leave a bad marriage with little kids and lost it all and ended up in school. So, but I understand how women stay in a marriage with children and a bad job and a bad marriage and all that because they're overwhelmed. I mean, they're overwhelmed. And again, so she can't leave her husband and her job all at the same time. She's going to have to pick something. I don't know the best advice for that because I think every single woman is different. The way I did it when I left 10 years ago, my job, and I still had $18,000 in student loans and my kids were still in school. And I was like, what in the world am I going to do? I'm going to open my practice. I might go bankrupt, but that is the way I've always looked at everything is what's the worst case scenario that's going to happen? Is it going to kill me? If it's not going to kill me or Jackson or Ella, then I think I should try it. But I have done so much in fear my entire life. And that's how I do things. I think I probably kind of thrive in that. Many women don't. You see those women. You and I see those women every day. They don't, and they're scared. And I don't know. I wish I could say it was God. I love God. I believe in God. I mean, that's a piece of it. That's my strength,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know that He gives me the strength to do this, but a lot of it is just chutzpah.
Yeah.
And women have
more faith in God.
They are in this on this hamster. Is it a hamster wheel? What is it? Gerbil wheel? What?
Yeah.
They
wheel.
just cannot even breathe. Literally, they wake up. It is balls to the wall from the second they get up until the second they go to bed at night. And there is no room. There's no margin for them to even come up with a plan.
But even that's a choice.
Well,
right?
It is.
Even
and I made a choice 10 years ago. I left for 3 days, had never done this in my life, went for 3 days to a vacation by myself. Well, this was more than 10 years ago, and made a business plan for my new practice. And that was a huge turning point for me because I had some clarity. I had a little bit of space. I was by myself. I came up with my plan. I made a decision to do it. And that was my choice, right? I made a choice and I did it. Yeah. And again, those women need to automate, eliminate, and delegate. I tell them that every day. Don't commit to anything else. Nothing else at work. Nothing else at work. No room mother. Your child's still going to go to 5th grade, whether you're the room mother or not. Stop it. If you don't like it, don't do it.
Yeah.
Start getting you some margin so that you can start building this life and maybe getting out of this marriage or this job. Or maybe the marriage even isn't so bad, but they've got all this other chaos going on in their life. And, they've grown apart from, nobody gets married thinking we're getting divorced.
Of course not. Of course not.
I don't know. I married the wrong man, so I made a bad mistake. But a lot of people didn't. They did marry good people, and their life got so chaotic that they grew so far apart.
Yeah.
And then the kids turn 18 and they don't even know each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Without question. But we have to consciously acknowledge 2 things. First, that we do have some control there. And if we don't opt for that control, it's going to control us.
Yes.
And these situations which don't feel physical will manifest as physical if you continue to allow them to hurt you. This is why your trauma story is so important, because if you don't deal with the trauma that happened 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, It's going to keep happening and keep hurting you in today.
You bet.
So we have to acknowledge these things, and we have to do something with them. We have to give it some finality. You don't have to leave your husband. Commit back to making that marriage worth having, right?
That's right.
Make it into something worth having so that it doesn't hurt you and helps you. And then the other part of it is that we've completely lost our faith in God.
You bet.
We've lost that relationship. We've lost that connection, because we have to trust that God will be there for us and God will help us. Now, will God do everything? No. I mean, God didn't take my medical school examinations for me. God didn't get me board certified as a surgeon.
No.
But when I left surgery at the age of 50, when everyone thought that I lost my mind or my skills, or maybe both, to go out into the world and do this, be an integrative oncologist, help people to truly recover their health, the thing that was with me, the person that was with me, was God. Because I trusted that if I felt compelled to do this, God would be there with me.
You bet. And so that leads me to what I talked about, what you said at the beginning. There was only one disciple who stepped out of the boat. That was Peter. And I say this over and over every week to women. I say, look, I stepped out of that boat 10 years ago, not knowing if anyone was going to come through those doors of my clinic that I was opening. And I kept my eyes on God the entire time. And every time Peter took his eyes off God, right, or off Jesus, he sunk down, right? And then he would get back right, walk on water. Only one disciple walked on water. Every single one of us can get out of that boat. You are dead right on. We've lost our faith in God. And if you're a believer in God, I'm telling you, I'm a big believer. I believe that a huge piece of my business is because probably 3 years before I opened my own practice, I got really serious about tithing. I had always tithed. I was raised in church. Even though I was raised in such a chaotic childhood, my mom always took me to church, and she was a believer. And, she was just so broken herself. And we tithed. But then I went through such a hard time that I just didn't feel like I could tithe the way I was taught to tithe, but I did. But anyway, I got serious about it. What I've learned the last 14 years of tithing above and beyond is you can't outgive God ever, which it makes me emotional. I was going to cry about it, because I swear that this business has exploded the last 10 years because I put my faith in it, and I tithe no matter what. And I mean, the more I tithe, the better my business gets. And so that comes back to community, my sixth step, as you were talking about. Jesus believed in community, man. We are the loneliest society in history right now. I work with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I was on the board for them for 5 years in Tennessee. Suicide rates are climbing. They climbed last year. Again, the fastest growing rate of suicide is age 10 to 24. Inside that age bracket, 10 to 13 are dying faster than any other age bracket.
Oh my God.
It's unheard of. There's no community. You heal when you have community. You do. Yeah. We know that. Your cortisol levels go down, right? When you're laughing with your tribe, when you're hee-hawing, when you're out there with your buddies. And Jesus had community. He had 12 people that he was tight as ticks with. But then inside that community, inside that 12, he had a tighter group, and then even brought it down tighter. There are 2 of them that he was super close with. So you don't have to have 100 friends. I tell people this. You need a few people, 1 or 2. If you've got 2 good people in your life, you're blessed.
Yeah.
And people heal when you have community. Your stress is lower, right? You probably eat better. You probably sleep better. I mean, all the things. I don't know about pooping better if you have good community. I don't know what the research shows on that. But we need community. We need people. And the older I get, at 58, man, that's what you want. You want your community, right? You want peace. You want good health. You want your children to be happy and healthy and whole. I mean, it's real simple.
Yeah. Well, we
It's
are
real simple.
social.
So
We
it's
are
my sixth
social
step.
creatures, without
You
question. We are
you
social
bet.
creatures,
Yes.
and we know that animals in isolation die. Babies in isolation die. You can feed them, but they won't survive. Right? We are social creatures, and when we look at the societies around the world that have the most health and longevity, these are societies that are multi-generational dwellings, that they live in a communal kind of way. They grow their food together, they eat their meals together, they 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 basically live a very connected, interconnected life.
You bet.
And this is what promotes such a, I mean, of course they eat well, and they don't have all of the technological distractions from life that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So they sleep better than we do. But for sure, one of the major aspects of their longevity is their sense of community.
You bet. You bet. Not even their exercise, because those people are they're moving,
Yeah.
they're going to town, they're going to the market, they're going to the village, they're doing all the things they're seeing. It's not even, it's funny. Yeah. It's when I was in Italy and just watching the community. Yeah. We're missing it. We have neighbors that we don't even speak to, we just hi. And so it's a huge piece of healing, and there's way more than that, right? You got to have sexual health, you've got to have financial health, you need all that. But that's how I work it, Jen. I don't know if it's right or wrong. Eat well, sleep well, move well, poop well, de-stress well, commune well, and it's what I work on. And I've been blessed. I've had patients for 15 years, the same ones, and it's so humbling to know that they still come around, and we're working on it all the time, right?
Yeah.
Because again, you don't have all those balls in the air perfect. I
Yeah.
don't. I
Yeah.
tell people that, look, there was only one perfect human, and it's not you and it's not me. And we're never going to get it 100%. But man, every day you make better choices. You look back and you're like, man, I'm not where I need to be, but I'm so much better than I was, as
Yeah.
Joyce Myers says often. And it's just, your body thrives when you're thriving. I mean, it just wants to be 100%, and it doesn't take much to turn it around. I'm proof, because good Lord, I'm just a redneck kid from Gilbertsville, Kentucky. What? I didn't grow up knowing any of this. And by gosh, I'm not going to go down the same path that my mom went down. I'm not.
Well, that's amazing, and your story is so inspirational. For the person who just doesn't feel well, has some fatigue, has some joint aches, just, feels old even though chronologically they're not. How would you tell someone to get started? What should they do?
My first thing for them would be, I would say, go look in your kitchen, look at your refrigerator, your freezer, your cupboards. Take stock and take inventory of how much processed, packaged, bagged, fake, man-made frankenfood you have in there, right? If is it a box, a bag, a can? If it's going to be there in 6 months, it's not real food. So just take inventory. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but start learning about gluten. Maybe read my chapter on gluten, right? Maybe read JJ's book, whomever. I don't care. Read a book. Listen to a podcast, one thing. I would say cut out. I would start learning the 7 things, and I would cut one thing out. Now, I tend to have people rip the Band-Aid off and do it all at one time. But if you don't know anything, learn what gluten is. Cut one thing out. Then cut dairy out. Baby steps. And as you run out of that food in the house, don't bring it back in, or that frankenfood. Don't bring it back in. Make better decisions. And it's incredible how fast you start to feel better.
Yeah.
But it's overwhelming. I mean, and women or everybody just throws their hands up and says, I can't do this. Like, it's too hard.
Yeah. What's the name of your book?
Being sick is harder, though. I'm going to tell you that.
Yeah, for
Being
sure.
sick is harder.
So
Wild and Well. Dani's 6 common sense steps to radical healing.
amazing.
It's a good evergreen book, one that you would have forever. It's not dated because it's common sense.
Yeah.
Common sense is not, it doesn't go out of style.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
the whole first part's on trauma. So I do have the adverse childhood experience questionnaire in there. The first part's on trauma. You're not your past. That's the title of it. You're not your past. And then I get into inflammation, and then it breaks down my 6 steps. And I think it's a great book. It's available anywhere you buy books.
Amazing. Amazing. So make sure you pick up Dani's book. It's an important read because we all need those foundations of health. And unless you have those foundations in place, it's very, very hard to be healthy. And after all, that's all of our goals. I mean, no one has a goal of living to 96, but spending the last 15 years in a nursing home, debilitated or losing your mind or being in pain. But that's what's happening with most people. And the majority of our healthcare dollars are being consumed at the end of people's lives so that they can live longer, but they're not living better.
You just triggered something. I shared this a couple of weeks ago on Instagram. I literally pulled off the road in a buffalo herd in Western Kentucky because I had this thought. Every single one of you that are listening, that are part of Jenn's tribe, you need to know this. If you have a healthcare provider, whether it's a nurse, a doc, or whatever, a healthcare provider who says, we're just going to wait. We're just going to watch, and we're going to watch your blood sugar. We're going to watch your blood pressure, right? We're going to watch your cholesterol. You need a new healthcare provider, and you need to find one now. And there are plenty of them out there who are not going to just watch and wait for you to die, for you to have a stroke, for you to be a full-blown diabetic, for you to have whatever. Watch and wait for what? I mean, what is that? I don't get that. And that's what I lived with for 24 years. I mean, I guess they were watching for me to lose my colon, right? To turn into straight up ulcerative colitis.
Yep.
So if your healthcare provider is not walking this journey with you, is not digging, is not curious, then you deserve a new healthcare provider. Quite frankly, that may be the first place to start. Rather than quit your job or whatever, or, have that talk with your husband, find the provider who's going to hold your hand and help walk you through this journey of healing your body from the inside out. They are out there. They are out there.
Yeah, for sure. And the world is changing. And people like you and I are becoming more and more common, thankfully. And if you don't have a partner in your health, you need to find one.
Yes.
That's a very important point. Because waiting for the disease to happen, which is how the conventional medical world practices, waiting for the disease to happen doesn't benefit anyone but them. Right?
Nope.
It for sure doesn't benefit you, and it doesn't have to happen. If it does happen, you and I both know that it can be reversed, that things can change, but change requires change. Change requires the things like you talked about today, those 6 steps that are listed in Wild and Well. So make sure you get your copy of Wild and Well by Dani Williamson. Dani, it was so great to have you here today. Where can people find you?
DaniWilliamson.com is the website, but all of the social media is Dani Williamson Wellness. So that's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Same thing, Dani Williamson Wellness. And just like you, people who do what we do for a living, we share a lot of free education every single day. Yeah. So follow all your favorite healthcare providers. They're practicing functional medicine, and you'll learn a lot. Even if you can't find an integrative provider in your town or your area, I mean, because we love what we do. Yeah. Those of us who've stepped out of the boat and practice integrative medicine, we never get tired of practicing, do we? Yeah. I mean, it's
absolutely.
there's a fire under you. And my colleagues who practice traditional, just allopathic medicine, they are burned out. They are exhausted. They're seeing 60 patients a day. And I love what I do. And I hope I die seeing a patient. I hope I am 80 years old, still doing what I want to do. If I want to work, I want to be working.
Well, but it is exhausting doing the same thing and not getting results. And that's what is happening in conventional medicine, is that they're not getting results because, you can't just suppress symptoms and expect good outcomes, because they're not there. It doesn't exist. And you can't talk about cures when you're not looking for root causes. You can't talk about cures or reversing disease when you're not doing anything to address why the disease is there. And my hopes, in addition to us helping our people, is that we help practitioners to see in a different light. It took my own illness for me to take my blinders off, because, I thought what I was taught in medical school was true. I thought what I was taught in medical school was the correct thing to do. And, it is not rewarded when you're in medical school to think outside of the box. It's certainly not rewarded in residency to think outside of the box. They want you to do what they want you to do, and they want you to do the thing that they did the way that they did it. So it takes a lot of bravery to step off of the boat. So I commend you for having done that. I'm so grateful for you, for your message, for your book, for how you help people, and the generosity with which you give. It's amazing. Thank God that you were brave enough to walk away and go on a different path. So
thank you.
I thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like it, please share it. And I will be back next week with another episode. It's Dr. Jenn. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Keeping Abreast podcast with Dr. Jenn. I hope you found the discussion informative and empowering. Remember, breast health is health. So by staying informed and taking proactive steps, you have the power to optimize your well-being. My team and I encourage you to apply the knowledge gained from today's episode to make positive changes in your life and share what you've learned with others. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to us and help us to reach more people who can benefit from these conversations. Stay connected with me on social media, where I share additional resources, advice, updates, and announcements related to breast health. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Dr. Jenn Simmons. And remember, my Jen has 2 N's. So until next time, remember to stay proactive, informed, and confident in your breast health journey. The key to your health is you.